This is Jason Parker. The current time is 1:28 p.m. Eastern Time. I am going to be receiving a call shortly from the Portland Police Bureau Chief Lovell. We are going to discuss protests that have been happening for the last 150 something days. I'm going to keep this recording until I receive the call and then keep recording throughout the entire call. We'll see what kinds of responses he has and how open he is to answering some of my questions. So we're just going to let this sit for a couple of minutes and hopefully he will be punctual. It's now 1:29 p.m. And if I didn't say it, he said that he would be calling me at 10:30 Pacific time. So that should be in about a minute here. I am recording through Bluetooth using Microsoft's Your Phone app, which I have the other side linked to my Android phone. And so I should be getting an incoming call on my desktop PC just to explain the setup so that, yeah. You should hear the ringing once it starts also. I'm recording this through OBS with video. The video is currently disabled. There's nothing on the screen, so I'll be taking the audio from the video, but I'm going to, of course, keep the raw video and audio together so that just so they're, yeah, the unbroken link, groupable, the timing and everything. Wonder if I can very quickly put a timer on OBS. I think I'm comfortable doing that. Be like here, we'll see if we can do this. Oh, yeah. Capture, window capture. No, I don't want window capture. I want play capture. No, I want that. Nope. Those were my questions and comments for the chief. We'll try to stick to them. I'll do a browser search and see how that works. That was a notification on my phone unrelated to this. Here we go. Time and date. The time and date there. Um, I don't want to worry about clipping or anything, so this is what you get. Snap it though. Very clearly, it is 1:34 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And so this clock will hopefully show that there are no cuts or anything. Making very minor changes to the document here. So, not functional. Phone is ringing. Let's answer. Hello.
Hey, this is Jason.
Yeah, hi. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. So, yeah, I wanted to talk to you about some. Obviously, these protests have been going on for what, 148 days or something like that. I mean, a couple of times where maybe weather or various other things, people have taken the night off. So, I have a couple of things that I have talked to many of the protesters individually. I've spoken to
Mm,
quite a few of the community leaders. I've spoken to a lot of the people who do the streaming of the protests, the live
uh-huh.
streaming, and I think I've got pretty much a consensus on what would be necessary for the protests to nearly stop. There would be a very significant reduction in the number of people that would be out, and I wanted to discuss some of that with you. And I also wanted to ask you a few questions, if that's all
Yeah.
right. So I've got a list here. So the first thing that people want is to publicly and immediately release all police misconduct reports, and that would be, obviously the PPB would be doing that. I'm sure that there have been plenty of reports, plenty of complaints from people on the ground, protesters, press, where they've been injured or otherwise falsely arrested or things like that. Um, and I'll send you this list as well after this call.
Okay.
I'll You'll have to text me an email address if that's okay.
Yeah,
But
that's fine.
okay. Um, so yeah, they're also committing the PBB and I guess you as chief committing to not hiring any officers that have been fired from other police agencies, whether that be different cities or out of state or anything like that. I mean, I know that there is work being done to have a nationwide database for that. I know
Mm-hmm.
that that has not really progressed at this point, but I think that as chief, and I think that, as part of that hiring process, I think that that's something that can be determined. Um, when you're hiring someone, you look at their past employment. One of the
Oh yeah.
questions
Mm-hmm.
is, why did you leave this department, right? And of course, they're going to tell you the answer to that. And if they tell you, hey, I was fired, you can deal with it from there. Is that something that you would commit to doing?
Uh, Probably. I don't foresee where we would hire someone who got fired from somewhere else.
It has definitely happened, and I would be happy to send you documentation after this call of when that's happened.
Okay, yeah, I'd be interested to see.
Okay, sure. I can do that.
Was it a long time ago? Was it recently?
I don't recall at right this moment, but I can get that for you.
Okay.
Okay, so another one that this has been a very big one. Brent Taylor, one of your officers, has been extremely aggressive during these protests. He has injured many multiple people, well beyond what anyone, even including other officers, would consider reasonable. And so there have been many complaints against him in particular, and people would like to uh, see his removal expedited. I think that's something that everyone would really like you to look into personally. And again, I can send you as much footage as you need from 140 something days of Brent Taylor being extremely aggressive that you can watch yourself. You can see that this is very clearly not to the book, not to anything like that. Um, and so that's something that they want. That's something that
Okay.
they also would like to see all charges dropped on all protesters. There have been a very significant amount of number of charges of, you know, rioting, misdemeanor rioting, or um, you know, uh, interfering or resisting arrest, things like that, where nobody was injured and it was all kind of it's not necessary. So I think that is a big thing that people have wanted to see for quite some
Yeah. Well, that's
time.
kind of more up to the DA's office than the PPB, like as far as what they actually charge or what they take. We make the arrest, but the
Sure.
charging decisions all comes from the DA's office.
No, I understand that, but as part of that, the PPB is the one recommending those charges. Is that not accurate?
We're the ones making the arrests on them, but a lot of them don't get charged anyway.
Um, okay, I would love to be able to send you some documentation of specific arrests um, that would fall under this category of there's no reason that they should have been arrested and there's no reason that they should continue any of the proceedings. But again, we can do that after. I can send you an email with all this information. And the other thing, and I think this is something that you would find very interesting as let's call it a science experiment. So these protesters are out there every night. PPB has been out there very nearly every night. One thing that they would like to see is for PPB to not go out when they're protesting. Let them be. We've seen this in other cities where that's happened. I've personally witnessed it in Washington, D.C. and in Atlanta, where when the police don't show up, the rioting doesn't happen. Or not the rioting, but none of the violence happens. The violence has been shown in various places to be caused solely by the police. People get more anxious, more up in arms, things like that. Where without the police being present, none of that would have happened, or at least less of it would have happened. And so I would very much recommend you try that for a couple of nights or a week, and you can watch the protests. I mean, there are plenty of live streams, and I know that PPB watches some of those live streams. Um, if you were to watch those without any officers, you can see that things aren't going to get violent. And if they do start getting violent, then hey, send some officers in, right? Is that a fair request?
I don't know. I think we've tried to take the approach to not be visible, kind of
Well,
tuck
it's
away and see what's
it's
going to happen.
I
And
understand.
then we would only come out when crime started being committed or our presence was warranted by the action of the protesters, or if a riot started taking place.
Okay. Can you, this is actually not on my list. Can you define for me what you would consider a riot or riotous behavior?
Well, there's a statute definition,
Sure.
but I think when we come out, it's like if there's criminal activity taking place, and we respond to that. I mean, it's hard to say that if the police weren't there, no violence or criminal activity would take place. I mean, that's kind of a tough statement to make
Sure.
definitively.
And maybe I should, if I did, I'll correct myself. Um, I think I would say less, maybe not none, uh, but less. I've seen this happen in several places. Having watched these streams for 150 something days, I would assert that that is most certainly true. And yeah, we can discuss that later, or we can, I'll send you various footage. I'll send you anything you need from me. I have everything you'll possibly want. Um,
Okay.
but if you would try that for a couple of nights, and you said that you like to stay out of sight. I think out of sight isn't quite enough. Um, while they're out of sight, they are still organized. They are, ready in probably in their riot gear, just waiting for anything to happen to go in and stop it. Right? When when there is violence in a crowd. Okay, so let's say you have protests. If somebody or a small group of people start causing violence, how quickly would you expect that violence to require a response from an entire, um, heavily armed, heavily armored response team? Would you say that it's reasonable that if, let's say 5 people were breaking windows, setting trash cans on fire, do you think that 100 officers in riot gear is correct level of escalation?
It would depend on how big the crowd is. I mean,
Okay.
there's a lot of other factors.
Okay. So this all just ties into that same, see what happens. And I mean, with being able to see the live streams, um,
Mm,
I think that that would even give you possibly a better look into what's happening on the ground there than just having officers, a couple of blocks away, right? If the officers are a couple of blocks away, or if you have people, embedded within the crowd, um, they may not necessarily have up to date and accurate information. Whereas if you're watching live streams, of course, that's going to be live. Well, so I would recommend that as a course of action. That's something that I've seen a lot of people request, is that the officers need to be not just not visible, but also not present.
yeah, but if they're not present too, it's hard to mount a response if you do need one. You know what I'm saying?
Right, and that's the question I was asking. Basically, is if you have several people who are, committing violence, committing crimes, breaking windows, setting small fires, um, how quickly would you expect the rest of the crowd? So let's say there are 500 people in the crowd, and there are 5 people, doing this, things that are illegal. Would you expect that the rest of the crowd would immediately jump on and, also take part in that? Or would you expect that, the 5 minutes or whatever it would take uh, for the PPB to arrive, um, that they would be able to quell it at that point? Like,
I don't know. It's hard to say because you'd have to have officers available to get there. Then, like a patrol response, you probably get one or two officers. If you have
sure.
a large crowd of people, even if there's just a few engaged in that behavior, you still have to be able to address those few and still manage the crowd
No, and I
aspect of
understand
it.
about the resources being available. I'm not saying don't have the resources available. what I'm saying is, either have them stay at the Justice Center or have them just not be staged. Have them make it clear that we are letting the protesters protest peacefully. We are not going to be showing up unless some violence or illegal activity occurs. I think that would go an enormous way to, just to showing that the PPB isn't the bad guy.
Hmm.
Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
I kind of get what you're getting at.
Okay. So I've actually got outside of some of that, I've got a couple of questions that they've asked me to relay to you, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
So, uh, first off, and I think the most important one right now, just given that it's only a week away, what measures are the PPB taking to deal with violence on and after Election Day?
Well, I mean, we're working with our local partners, trying to put together plans for um, just a safe election time period. So the county, state police, um, DA's office, just our normal partners, trying to put together planning to address anything that might come up. And we're expecting a pretty, lively election period potentially, depending on how things go. But that's kind of our normal planning for this time of year.
Okay.
Why are there things specifically that they're concerned about?
There were not. That's just one of the questions that they asked me. I know with the group, the Proud Boys, and there's been a lot of conflict there. Um, it's just they would like to see what, if anything, is planned, and if you got that planned, then great. But let's move on. So when is the PPB going to release the number of officers that have been injured and or hospitalized during the protests? This is just a count.
Mm, I don't know if there's a plan to release the exact number, but there have been several. But I don't know if that number is like something we just release.
Will you?
Um, I don't know. I have to see if that's something we do normally. I mean, what's the interest in that number?
There have been a lot of comments from made by the PPB about various injuries that police have had during these protests.
Hmm.
And from what people have seen on the ground and what I've seen is if any injury has happened, it's a scratch or very, very minor things. So particularly what they're wanting to see is the number of hospitalizations to see how many injuries officers have had uh, that have warranted that sort of that sort of care.
Like hospitalization care?
Yeah. Um, okay, so there, and I may have the date wrong. You'll have to correct me on this. Um, the PPB has said that it's going to take until November 15th before officers are going to be able to start wearing proper identification. Can you tell me why it would take that long?
I think it's just getting that all squared away.
Can you explain?
There's hundreds of officers who have to get that stuff all lined up, so it takes a little bit of time to get that all orchestrated.
Where
I
is the
think that's
delay?
probably the delay.
Where is the delay in that process specifically?
I'm not sure. It's probably in some kind of procurement, maybe, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. Would it be possible for you to look into that and maybe respond later to me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you going to send me an email with all this stuff?
Yes, yes. I'll send you this whole
Okay.
list and I'll send you some other documentation as well.
Okay.
Um. Okay. So. Oh. Sorry. Just to follow up on that question. Um. Many of the officers who are, uh, the riot police, they have existing identification. They have 2 or 3 digit numbers. For example, 44. I can't actually remember at this time what Brent Taylor's number is. I'll get that to you, but um, unfortunately, I've forgotten that right now. But is there some way that, for the purpose of complaints, that those numbers are going to be linked? So, for example, if someone has a complaint against officer number 44, is that going to go uh, is that going to follow through that chain? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Would there be a way to link it? Is
Yeah,
what you're asking?
just so that the complaint or the complainant, I guess, knows that these are the same people. So that people on the ground, when they see, for example, Brent Taylor um, doing these things, people know what he looks like, but if his face is shielded or whatever else, is there some way for the complainants to know that this officer and this officer are the same person?
I think right now that complaint would go to IPR, and they'd have a way to link the number to the officer.
Okay.
And then I believe, and this would be a question for them, that during their process, that when they reach back out to the complainant, I think at that point IPR is providing them the officer information.
Um, I just IPR something internal police review.
Independent police review. It's under the
Um,
auditor.
sure. Okay. So what actions have you personally taken as chief to hold some of these officers accountable? For example, Brent Taylor. There have been quite a number of complaints lodged against him. Have you seen these complaints, and how, if at all, have you acted on them?
Uh, Brent Taylor, I don't think I've seen anything on him
I would
personally,
love to show you
but we do
information about
review
him.
these regularly. We get a lot of uh, things sent to us, like via video
Mhm.
or emails sent to us directly from people at the protests with complaints, and we investigate them. We forward them to IPR. We've opened our own internal investigations based on some of these videos. So we do have a process of reviewing them on our own.
Understood. The question
A
more
lot of these
specific.
come directly to independent police review.
Sure. I guess the more specifically, the question on this is, you as chief personally, have you done many of the reviews? Have you been involved at all with the individual complaints or any individual complaints? Have there been, for example, any complaints that have been so egregious that they've landed on your desk?
They would come to me later in the process. I wouldn't be the one investigating them on the front end, though.
Okay. Um. Okay. So
I've
I
got to get ready for my 11 o'clock, so I'm gonna have to jump off here. Can
I
you?
have one more question, if that's okay, and then I
Well,
can
I
email you the
gotta
rest.
I gotta see someone real quick before my 11. Can you just send it to me with this other stuff?
Sure, I can do that.
All
Can
right.
you text me your email address?
Yeah, I'll give it to you right now. It's real easy.